Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining me in the video today. This is a real playable octocontra-alto clarinet in key B flat. As many of you know, this is a project I've been working on for over 6 years now. Originally, I was planning on building an instrument from PVC pipe with salvage keys. However, as you know, that prototype was unsuccessful due to the tone holes being too small. For a while, I was almost ready to give up on the project, but last year I decided to give it my all and spent many months designing and building this prototype instrument. It's certainly far from perfect, but nevertheless, I'm very excited to show you this instrument and talk more about my plans for future versions. Now with this project, I only had one goal, and that was to have a playable octocontra-alto clarinet ready for Low Clarinet Fest 2025 in Phoenix. Now, this was no easy task. As I mentioned, the previous prototype unfortunately could not be made into a playable instrument due to the size of the tone holes, so I had to completely start from scratch. Now, if you see my other videos, you know I've worked on a lot of other projects involving 3D printing, specifically things like the contrabass clarinet extension, the bass oboe, the bass clarinet in G. All of these projects, while not directly related to the octocontra clarinet, really helped me figure out how I was going to approach this instrument. Now, the biggest problem with an instrument like this is just how long the keys need to be. And unfortunately, my 3D printer only has a build volume of about 8 inches cubed. So 8 inches, 8 inches, 8 inches. So that meant that some of these longer keys were certainly not going to fit in that printer. So how did I 3D print an octocontra-alto clarinet? Well, for the body, what I did was I made it in individual sections. So both the lower joint and the upper joint are in 5 individual pieces, which were then held together with carbon fiber pins and epoxy. Now, this is not perfect, unfortunately. As you can see, there are some areas where that bond failed and I had to use tape to prevent leaks so I could continue playing the instrument throughout the festival. That worked okay, and I still managed to make it through with a playable instrument. So as far as I'm concerned, the instrument did its job successfully with only a few minor problems. Now, for the keys, that's a little bit more tricky because you can't really just glue pieces of plastic together and expect a nice stiff key. So what I did was the same thing that I did for the long key on my bass oboe. You can see that these keys all have a carbon fiber rod. So for example, on the A key, the touch piece is down here, the pad cup is all the way up here, and there's a long carbon fiber rod that's connecting them. That way I can 3D print the more complicated shapes, have the springs and the pads connected to those 3D printed components, and then have a carbon fiber rod that'll give it stiffness. So I pretty much did that throughout the instrument, and that allowed me to actually build an instrument this large, which is something I actually wasn't sure could be done. It's not 100% perfect again. Some of the longer keys still do have a little bit more flex in them than I would like, but I think it's a good proof of concept. And I think with a bit of refinement, I can make a much better instrument the next time around. So now let's take a closer look at the mechanism of this instrument. So this clarinet has simplified Boehm system fingerings. So what I mean by that is that it has all the basic fingerings that you would expect on a Boehm system clarinet, but it does not have any alternate keys. So for example, here's the right stack. You can see you have 3 touch pieces for your 3 fingers. That's sort of equivalent to the ring key on the lower joint of a clarinet. But you do not have a sliver key here for F sharp or B natural. For the right hand pinky keys, you have an F C key, you have an A flat E flat key, but you do not have the 2 other alternate pinky keys. And for the trill keys, you only have the 1 E flat key like you would have on a LeBlanc contrabass clarinet. Moving to the other joint of the instrument, you can see for the pinky keys, you have your C sharp, G sharp, you have your E, B, and you have your F sharp, C sharp, but there's no alternate C key here. And once again, you have 3 touch pieces, but there's no sliver key. For the throat tones, you have your A and your A flat. And then I can just carefully flip the instrument around. You have your thumb key, and then this has independent manual register keys. Now, just like on my bass oboe, I added adjustment screws on some of the keys in order to ensure that I could quickly adjust it on the go without having to glue on cork or remove more material. Now, for the pads, everything but the register keys has Musicmatic needle pads. Now, as I mentioned previously, the reason my previous prototype didn't work was because the tone holes were too small, and that was ultimately because I could not source pad cups big enough for that instrument. Now, because these pad cups are 3D printed, I can make them as large as I want. So this largest pad cup here is 42 millimeters, and I was able to use 42 millimeter neopad there. And the nice thing about these, they're self-leveling, so I don't really need to level the pads once I install them. I just put them in and adjust them, and they're good to go. So I did that throughout the instrument, and it worked great. Now for the springs, again, like my other instrument, I'm not sure you can really see, but they're little coil springs. And again, I've had really good success with those, so I use them throughout the instrument. Now to give you an idea of what this instrument sounds like throughout the range, I'm going to play a chromatic scale from low E up. So as you heard, it does play a chromatic scale, but there are a few problems with this specific prototype. I think the biggest one is the throat E flat. You can see originally I wanted to have an automatic mechanism that would open a dedicated tone hole for that note. However, unfortunately, when I put that mechanism together, it didn't work as I had envisioned. So 2 days before I left for Phoenix, what I had to do was I had to design a simplified mechanism where the throat B flat would just come out of the lower register bend. Now, it works, it's fairly flat and stuffy. I'm probably going to do something different on the next prototype, but I just wanted something playable for the festival, so it was a good retrofit for the time. Now, other than that, it is a little bit tricky to play in the upper register just because of the voicing. You do have to be very precise and careful with that. I may experiment with different mouthpieces, but most likely it's just going to be the nature of the beast. With an instrument this large, you really can't push too much air through it, otherwise the sound breaks, but you also have to have a pretty constant, heavy flow of air into the instrument in order to make sure you get good tone. So I think that's kind of expected. It is a bit tricky to play, but it is still playable. I mean, I was still able to play a lot of music that I actually thought was going to be too hard to play on this instrument. So that's something I wasn't expecting. Even though this instrument may not be as agile as a bass clarinet, for example, it still is a useful musical instrument, and it's definitely something I want to explore more. I just want to say it was very fun showing off this instrument at Low Clarinet Fest. I had so many people, both friends that I've met previously and new friends that I've made, come up to try the instrument. I had people asking to take pictures with the instrument. I even had somebody that wanted me to autograph their case. I was really honored to hear so much praise for the work I do, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who's supported my work and has given me the motivation to continue to do what I do. Now, originally when I started this YouTube channel, I wasn't really expecting a ton of people to be interested, but I was very wrong about that. A lot of people have shown a lot of interest in my project, and again, I just want to say thank you for all your support. So what's next? Well, first of all, I'd like to announce that I will be playing this instrument with the Plattsburgh Clarinet Choir in Paramus, New Jersey on February the 9th. I'll post more information about that in the description. If you're able to make it, I encourage you to come. It's $20 cash at the door. Again, I'll post more information in the description. And you'll get to see and hear a real-life octocontra-alto clarinet, so that's very exciting. Now, specifically with this instrument, there's definitely a few things that I want to do different on the next prototype. The biggest one is the body section. So I think splitting it into 5 pieces, it worked with the printers that I have, but I'm going to need to figure out a better solution for the next prototype. What I think I'm going to have to do is get a bigger printer, and I'm going to have to research a bit which one I want to get. Originally, I was going to get the new Bamboo Labs printer that I've heard rumors about. It's supposed to be bigger than the X1 Carbon, but with some recent drama with Bamboo Labs, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I may have to look at different brands. But eventually I do want to make it so that I can print the each section in only 2 pieces. So that way there's only one single joint on each joint. And I'm also going to have a better way to connect those pieces together, probably with some kind of mechanical connection, maybe like bolts I think the glued-in studs, it works, but they're not quite as strong as I would like them to be. As far as the key work goes, I do want to do some ergonomic improvements. I also want to hopefully add a few alternate fingerings, just because I feel they'd be useful. Although very difficult, just with the nature of the instrument, it's very hard to fit extra keys in between the already thick 3D printed plastic keys. So I'll have to do a little bit of experimentation there to see if that's possible. I'm probably not going to change the form factor of the instrument too much, with the exception of bringing the bottom bow up, because I found that I was having to hold my left hand very, very high. It's not as comfortable as I would like, so I'm going to try and bring the whole instrument down by a few inches so that it's a bit more comfortable to play for long periods of time. And hopefully one day, once I've gotten all those kinks worked out, and once I've figured out how to mass produce these, I'm hoping I might be able to even sell these octocontra clarinets for hopefully a pretty reasonable price. So it's probably not going to happen for years, but it is something I am hoping to do. So that's something to look out for. And of course, for the next prototype, I also want to see if I can go lower than low E. I already have a plan for how I can install a low E flat key on the instrument, and I have some ideas about how I can do notes lower than that. Ideally, I want to go to low C, but it'll be a matter of if I can fit those keys on the instrument. I think it really makes sense to have this instrument go to low C just to take full advantage of those extremely low notes. So that is the ultimate goal. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this sort of content and aren't already subscribed to my channel, I ask that you consider subscribing, as I will be posting more sound clips of this instrument as shorts on my channel. All right, everyone, I hope you all have a wonderful day.